Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest digital event for 43 Alumni for Biden. My name is John Farner, part of the organizing committee for 43 Alumni for Biden. Along with me are two other members of the organizing committee. And of course, we all recognize our guest of honor this evening, which is Governor John Kasich. We're going to have a moderated Q&A after the governor's remarks. So if you have any questions, comments that you want to tell the governor or for us to ask the governor, please go ahead and type those in. We will be sure to get to as many as possible. I know many of you emailed us beforehand with some questions as well. If you want to get that back up fresh and reiterate those questions in the moderated Q&A box, please feel free to do so. We really appreciate your time tonight. It's a big week for everybody coming off the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention this week. So we appreciate your time. Before we get to the governor's remarks, I'm going to throw it off to Karen Kirksey to talk a little bit about what's going on at 43 Alumni for Biden. Karen.
Thanks, John. So as some of you folks know, tomorrow we will be releasing the names of former Bush administration officials and appointees who are supporting Governor Biden publicly. So I want to just take a minute to thank everyone who signed up, who joined us publicly for supporting Joe Biden. It is not a small measure. I understand it. It does take courage to do so, and I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. I mean, you're standing on the side of democracy. You're on the right side of things, and so I need folks to understand that. For those who haven't joined us or haven't signed up, it is not too late. I extend that offer to you to join us publicly in support of Joe Biden. For those who can't understand, who can't support us, and are working behind the scenes, I fully understand, and I thank you for your support. But for those who feel compelled to join us, we welcome you. Please reach out on the website. If we can answer any questions for you, if we can help, move you from one spot to the other, let me know. We're here to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen. Our website's 43alumniforjoebiden.com. I think David would reach across the Zoom chat to strangle me if I didn't say that. So with that said, David, let's go ahead and introduce John Kasich.
Great. So first of all, again, thanks everyone for joining. Obviously, the importance of supporting and unifying our country is, during this election is the most important thing that we need to focus on. And, we just want to thank Governor Kasich for his courage. A lot of us worked with him back in the day when he was in the House, obviously as budget chair, actually balancing the budget back when fiscal responsibility was something that we cared about as Republicans, and it was a principle that we built the foundation of our nation on to make sure that we have the money to pay for the things that we say we're going to do. So his leadership there, and of course, successful governor of Ohio. I was honored to work and volunteer for Governor Kasich's campaign in 2016, and I think, his voice has become an important one on the national stage. And so, Governor, probably the first thing that you didn't expect to have on your resume at some point was featured speaker at the Democratic National Convention. So I'm curious, coming off of that last week, what has been the kind of feedback you've received as a result of your remarks?
I would say overall pretty good. I mean, I've had an awful lot of people talk about courage. I don't kind of feel that way about courage. I mean, I didn't think it took any, I thought they asked me to do this. I thought about it and I thought, I've been very concerned about the country and the division and all those other things. So what the heck? Talked to my friends about it. And as I always do, I listened and I made a decision and it was a good one. I'm very comfortable with it. Happy I did it. It is kind of amazing because I think I've spoken at, 2 or 3 Republican conventions. I lost count. Here I'm speaking, but so that makes it unique. And but I thought the message was. I wrote the message. I thought it was classy. To be honest with you, I didn't go and take lumber to Donald Trump, but talked about the things that I'm most concerned about. So some people don't like it, but most of them don't want to talk to me about that, right? So I'm kind of not the best guy to talk about a poll, but I feel, as I do the things I do and move around and look at some emails and things like that, it was good. And the reaction has been pretty positive. Let me just say one other thing. If in life you're trying to satisfy a lot of people because you want their approval, boy, I'll tell you what, that's just not going to work out really well because, on Mondays, people praise you. On a Tuesday, they tear you down. So I think in life, and for the people that have signed this petition, as Karen was mentioning, they stuck their necks out. They decided to do this. They felt it was the wrong thing to do. And I think we have to realize that life's really short. No matter what age we are, life's really short. So go for the gusto and feel good about who you are. But if you're going to measure what you're doing in anything on the basis of how many people applaud you or don't, you're going to find out that doesn't work out very well. And because, again, people have different points of view at different times. And so for me, if it had been overwhelmingly negative, I mean, that's okay, because the leaders, whatever you're doing, leaders have to walk a lonely road. If you weren't walking a lonely road, you wouldn't be a leader. If all you were looking for are people to agree with you, then I don't, that's what leadership is.
So let's start back at the Democratic National Convention. And I think all of us that are involved with 43 Alumni for Biden watched with great interest, specifically relating to how the convention balanced really two factions of the party they were trying to bring together. One of them being the Bernie Sanders, AOC, very progressive side of Democratic Party. But then you have the disenfranchised Republicans who are looking for leadership right now in an American president. And it was Joe Biden's time to sell himself to both of those audiences, both those contingencies. How do you think that went last week? So we'll start there.
Well, there's, of course, a tension inside the Democratic Party, just like there is a big tension inside the Republican Party. And I think that Joe did a pretty good job, although I must tell you that I've been saying since Sunday that he needs to speak forcefully about the violence in these cities, that we all believe in protests. And the reason why we believe in them is because change always comes from the bottom up. It doesn't come from the top down. Most of you have been involved in politics. Most politicians are not leading us. They basically get their cues and their orders from the public. And so protest is a form of course, of public expression, which can put pressure on public officials to pay attention. But there's no place for violence, because violence steals the message of the protest. And I know that, I guess today, I heard just as I was coming back from a bike ride that Senator Harris had come out and said something and condemned the violence. And I don't know, and said that she had talked to Joe Biden about it. But I've been very, very strong about this and been very concerned about it. It's a really, really an issue that should be clear to all of us. Violence has no place in changing the way that reform and change comes about. So I think they need to be clear on it, need to continue to be clear on it. I also think at the same time, it's an important message that people understand that we support the police, but we also know we need reform inside the police and the way they're trained, and which we did in Ohio. And we were able to get in front of what could have been some very ugly incidents out here, because I think we got credibility by involving people to try to reform the police in the proper way. So all these things are pretty clear. You just got to get out and say them.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see your CNN spot earlier today. They've actually been referencing your comments throughout the day on CNN regarding the protests and violence and the need for the Democratic ticket, Joe Biden, especially to come out and be more public, denouncing the violence specifically we're seeing in Wisconsin right now. David mentioned your work in Congress as budget chairman, and whoever wins the next election is going to have some challenges in front of them. Hopefully it's Joe Biden. It might be Donald Trump again. Do you see a scenario where either let's take for instance Joe Biden is in a position where he's going to have to sell those who supported him, meaning Republicans, to look at raising taxes, different ways of spending? How is the current budget situation, do you feel, play into this election and the future of congressional spending?
Well, I don't think right now that is front and center, but it's going to be. And it's going to be because it poses a real threat to economic growth. So, that first of all, it has to be recognized. Secondly, the notion we turn around and raise taxes. I know what politicians do with tax money. They spend it. They don't use it to plug a hole. But, you know, if Biden wins, there may be some taxes. He's already said he's going to raise some taxes. Look, here's what I really want to communicate, both for Republicans and Democrats. The country is changing. We are no longer back 40 years ago with Ronald Reagan. And I think this is where the party has gone wrong. We're sort of stuck 40 years ago in sort of the old themes. At this point, John, you and Karen, millennials, Gen Xers, you're now a majority in this country. And you have concerns about issues that are different than what the baby boomers are concerned about. And I don't want to speak for you, but there's a rising concern about the environment. There's growing concern and recognition that we have a problem with a wealth gap, the amount of difference between those on top and those who are not, and that wealth gap is a serious issue. I think there's serious issues and concerns, about immigration. I think there's concern about what's healthcare going to look like. I think that the millennials and the Gen Xers and the issue of race, the issue of social justice, these are all things that millennials and Gen Xers care about a lot more than the baby boomers. Not all baby boomers, because many of them, if they're thinking, they realize that we're moving into the future. We're not stuck in the past. And so the question is, which party can effectively address in a way that makes sense, the environmental issues, the debt issues, the issues of immigration, the wealth gap, all these kinds of things, the future of education, the rising cost of student loans, the rising cost of healthcare. Some of those are not things that you're sitting on the edge of your chair about, but we need to listen to what your concerns are, because you're going to be running the place. And I think it's our job to try to talk to you about the principles that we think have made the country great. And I think the problem with the Republican Party is it's put its head in the sand and has been unwilling to take on the issues, the issue of race, or the issue of environmentalism, or even the issue of debt, or the issue of unity and civility. It just seems so. Those are the things that I care a great amount about. Why do I like Joe Biden? Because I think Biden can put people around a table and we can all learn from one another. Because if you're not together, and if we can't get the people, the country together, then it's hard to come up with any solutions. Then all we're doing is yelling and screaming and canceling one another out. One other thing I want to make, because a point I want to make here, because this one I think is really important. In our country, around a lot of the Western world, we have eroded the concept or the belief of faith in God. I think this is very important, and let me tell you why. If you take what I happen to believe are the most important messages that come from the scripture, there's three. One, love God, okay, which creates humility for all of us. Two, love your neighbor as you want your neighbor to love you. And thirdly, remember that we're all made in the image of God. And today, I don't think we hold those principles, in a really high way. So we're able to cancel somebody out that we don't agree with. We're intolerant to people who don't think the way we do. It seems like it's very hard to get us to listen. And we're all feeding in these siloed troughs that reinforce what we think, and we think we're right and everybody else is wrong. I believe that to be able to unify this country again, it's not only going to take great leadership, but I think there's a spiritual element here that can lead us, give us a sort of a roadmap to how we ought to treat one another and respect one another. And once we get that done, John, then we can sit down and talk. I mean, I've negotiated, along with Senator Domenici, the biggest budget deal in modern time. And it took respect and cooperation and a little bit of compromise, and it worked for us. And we got to get back to that. But right now, we're so far from it. That's the reason why I've come out for Biden, because I think he will pull people together. If he doesn't, you're going to hear from me.
We welcome that too.
Yeah.
David, do you have a question?
Yeah, so related to that, Governor, I mean, obviously a lot of the folks on this call, many of which may have been, alumni of an administration or worked in public service in some way. One of the things that makes our group different is that we have worked in government and we have, tried to, live up to the principles of the country. And one of our themes is that character matters. And, I'm curious, to what extent do you think that, people say, well, I don't like President Trump, but I like his policies. And so that's some of the, pushback we get sometimes from fellow Republicans. They say, well, his personality isn't the greatest, but he's getting stuff done on behalf of what I believe from a, political perspective. So
well, you know what
would be your answer to that?
It's interesting. Now, last night, I thought the First Lady, I didn't see it last night, but I watched her speech on YouTube today. She talked about how proud she was to be an immigrant. I don't know whether people know this or not, but Donald Trump is attempting to reduce illegal, not illegal, legal immigration by about 50%. What's the policy that they love about this?
Yeah.
When I look at our relationship with allies around the world, yeah, it's really great to yell and scream at them and demand more. But frankly, we get more out of unity with them than we get out of standing alone. And I do give credit for the issue of deregulation. There was too much regulation put on by the Obama administration, but most of it, the bulk of it, was related to financial regulation. As we came out of the terrible meltdown where companies were acting totally irresponsible. Now, did they go too far? Yeah, and that was too much. But the deregulation has really helped our country. I think not punishing companies and enabling them to bring their profits home has been a very good thing. But there's so many fundamental things that I just don't agree with. And then the name calling and the derision and the put downs, you can't function like that in life. You can't function like that in a family, let alone trying to guide national policy. So I think that the way you conduct yourself really does matter. And but I also suggest to people, hey, look at the debt. Look how the debt has grown in this country. It's not like, oh, we got all this great policy, but over here we've got a guy that's putting out too many tweets. I think it's more complicated than that.
Governor, one of the biggest questions we get as an organization is, I support your efforts. I am a Republican, was a Republican. I worked for, I supported George W. Bush in his presidency. However, I'm having a tough time convincing my friends and family. And you laid out a case very eloquently earlier, but there's always just what I call zinger comebacks. We're going to regress into socialism. I am a single issue voter on abortion, or I like building a wall with immigration. What are your top recommendations on how we can communicate that resonates with those conservatives or those Republicans that either are still with Trump or still on the line of whether to buck the party, buck the GOP and go to Biden, or stay with Trump?
Well, for me, it's pretty clear the way that this country has become increasingly divided is just not acceptable. And this election, in my opinion, is not an election about ideology. It's about a return to some sense of the way of normalcy, because this is so abnormal what we're seeing. I think the ideological debate will come in 2024. But the question is, you have to ask people, do you think that this fighting and gnashing of teeth that is now not only with politicians, but all the way down in our families, is this healthy for our future? Can we be able to solve big problems when we're fighting with one another and can't listen to one another? And when you have leaders that encourage that, then it's very difficult to turn it around. It's going to be difficult to turn it around with somebody that wants to work to unify us. So, look, for people that are just stuck there, they're stuck there. But I would also say that part of this is don't hang on to yesterday. I think there are a lot of people that or a number of people who are like, well, I kind of like the things the way they were under Ronald Reagan. It's 40 years ago. Tell me right now what you think is so great with the party. What was our health care plan? When the Republicans wanted to strip health care away from 20 million Americans, what were they going to replace it with? They had nothing. Where are the intellectual ideas that drive the zeitgeist? So and I understand they say, well, they're going to be socialists and everything else. Well, first of all, I do hope that the Republicans will maintain control of the Senate. Secondly, I do think there needs to be a lot of attention paid to the concept of eliminating the filibuster. because if you eliminate the filibuster, you've now eliminated you've eliminated the need to try to seek bipartisan cooperation. Thirdly, I don't think Biden is some left winger. Okay, so a lot of the people on the hard left get an outside amount of publicity, but take a look at the platform that came out. There's no new Green Deal. There's so many things that there's no Medicare for all in there. And so I think the proof's kind of in the pudding. And will they be more liberal? Yeah. Are there things that I'm going to disagree with? Absolutely. Are there things I'm going to speak out about because I don't think they're good for the country? Yes. But I want to get us returned to some kind of normalcy here so we can stop all the fighting that's going on in this country. And what disturbs me the most is not the fighting among the politicians, but it has now reached all the people. Everybody's fighting, canceling one another out. What's it going to look like if we go 4 more years like this? However, John, I'm not so sure that you can convince anybody about this. I would just ask them, if you don't think that what you see in this country that's going on now isn't a big problem, then I can't convince you how to vote. I've sort of given up on some people that they're just not going to change. And all I do is get them upset and make enemies. But I think a lot of this is also up to Joe Biden to speak to the country. I think he did a better job at the convention of showing people he's just not some old man that can't control things. And secondly, I think he needs to be heard. And you know the way politics is. You go into a convention, you appeal to your base, then you come out and you try to govern. And I also know there'll be some people around him who are very strong. And am I worried that we're going to turn around and rush into socialism? I am not.
So what do you think the future of the GOP is then, Governor Kasich? You've been a leader among equals since your time in Congress, even when you were a governor. I mean,
look, for me, I'll just tell you what I did. I mean, people were really going crazy in the Republican Party when I expanded Medicaid. Now all these other Republicans are expanding Medicaid. I just did it before, years ago, before they got to it. And what did it result in? It resulted in, 600, 700,000 people in Ohio getting health care, getting treated for mental health. But I also came in, we were going down the drain on jobs. We created, 300,000-400,000 jobs. There was 89 cents in our rainy day fund. I left, there was about 3 billion. So we grew jobs. We were fiscally responsible. We expanded Medicaid, which meant that people could get help. When we cut taxes for the rich, we created the first earned income tax credit here. We create a police and community operation that gained credibility throughout the state and helped keep down, helped to begin to mitigate some of the serious problems we had. I won 86 out of 88 counties. I mean, so I am a conservative, but I'm also not stuck in 50 years ago. I wanted to deal with the issue of the environment, which is why I worked with John Kerry on World War Zero. And I only have agreed to do that is because we're not promoting some policy. We're saying we better recognize that we've got environmental challenges and problems in this country. I am concerned about this wealth gap. I am concerned about online education, the cost of college education for young people. I'm worried about those kinds of issues, and we need to recognize those issues and begin to offer ideas about them. And by the way, this putting these DACA kids and putting them at risk. They came here through no fault of their own, and all of a sudden, we got them every day. They wake up to say, "Am I going to be shipped out of the country?" I mean, it's just we have to address these issues and not be afraid of who's going to yell.
But many of us who worked for President Bush worked on immigration policy with him. And I think a lot of what you're saying now resonates with a lot of us who truly believe we were on the right track in the early 2000s, working with Senator McCain, Senator Kennedy, and President Bush to get through some true comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah, and what happened? I was on a stage with all these Republicans, and they couldn't run as fast as they could off the stage to say, "I didn't have anything to do with fixing this." Well, when you don't have a solution for healthcare, when you don't have a solution for the environment, when you don't have a solution for what you're going to do about the debt, I mean, what are your answers? What are you doing? What's the purpose of your party? Now, the Democrats, I don't agree with a lot of their solutions, But they're in the ball game right now. Let us get back in the ball game. Let us present our ideas and not just use scare tactics and division. And I mean, the end of Western civilization will come. I heard last night at the convention, Donald Trump stands between us and the end of Western civilization. I heard that. I almost fell off my chair. I mean, come on.
I would say we can compare platforms between the two parties, but I have nothing from Republicans to compare to the Democratic platform, so we can't really do that at this point, Governor. So
I just think we need to be modern, John. We need to modernize. We need to listen to you and to Karen, and we need to hear what your concerns are. We need to know what they are and not be afraid to address them in a, see, the problem is we're so conventional that anything that's not conventional shouldn't even be considered. Of course, we ought to be thinking about different ways to solve problems in creative 21st century ways.
Yeah. Well, I think Karen, myself, and David will all be on.
David, but David's old.
David, yeah, he's, I just have more hair than him. That's all.
Hey.
We're the first three on your campaign staff for 2024.
That's right.
Yeah, I think we'll be right there with you if this is your first campaign speech. What about? I have two more questions, and then we'll let you go. Yeah. One is, you mentioned the GOP convention, Governor. The rhetoric is harsh. It's harsher than what I believe came from the Democrats. Do you have any general thoughts about what you're seeing? I know you didn't watch live the First Lady's presentation.
Well, it's an appeal. That most of it is appeal to their base. But the First Lady, I thought, communicated a message that was very appealing to me. The problem is it doesn't reflect what we've been doing. So, on one hand, we say we ought to, I'm an immigrant, I'm all this, and we ought to be together. And, the protests are I don't know what she said about that, but the violence is bad. I agree with these basic things she said about the land of opportunity and everything. And we have to stop the division and the name calling. Okay, I agree with every bit of that. And maybe you should be president. Well, she couldn't be because she wasn't born here. But what we're seeing out of the administration belies that. It doesn't reflect what we're seeing. So there's a disconnect. But I thought she did a very nice job.
My final question, there's a lot of different groups out there. I know David's father-in-law, Tom Coleman, joined with Senator Flake earlier this week to announce, more than 30 former representatives and government officials for Republicans for Biden. You have our group, you have Lincoln Project, you have RVAT. Honestly, we all look to you for a lot of leadership here because you were out there up front, Governor, and you were by far one of, if not the most vocal and respected Republican individual out there that is both combining critical against President Trump and supporting Joe Biden. If you had any kind of advice for us as organizations who are supporting Joe Biden, whose audience are us, they're a bunch of Republicans that are out there. What do you are we going down the right path in your opinion? What do you suggest between now and Election Day?
Well, look,
what is going to get the job done?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't support him when he ran the first time. And then we actually had the convention in my state and I didn't go. Talk about catching heat. I had a lady about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, get up on her seat in her airplane and said, "I'm still mad at you. You didn't go to the convention." I mean, convention was like forever ago. I said, "Which convention are you talking about? The Lions Club?" So people are still mad about that. What I was worried about is I wrote this book called Two Paths, and the two paths that I did the other night. I hoped that he was going to change. I was hoping we were going to see somebody to tackle these problems in a really constructive way, unite the country. But I didn't see it. And so none of the things that I have said about him are personal. I do not believe in engaging in personal attacks against him or the administration. And anytime I think that, I want somebody to catch me and say, "Don't do that, John," because I've never done that. But I think we have to believe now we got to settle the country down. And then the ideas, we should be generating them as we settle the country down, have a constructive, additive agenda, not a negative like, "Oh, that's bad and this is bad and the other thing's bad." That's not appealing. Develop something that's really attractive, that can be aspirational for all of us to support and cling to. In terms of these diverse groups, I mean, I guess you just should all do what you're doing. And I'm excited about your group because you are the profile of the future of this party. And I'd be delighted as we go forward to figure out how we shape this and what the agenda should be. And I'm excited to work with young people on this and get you all to dream about the way that things ought to be, whether it's related to race or justice or healthcare or the mentally treatment for the mentally ill. I mean, there's so many things. And because you care about people doesn't make you something other. You can be a conservative and care. I'm a conservative that fortunately, I have a lot of compassion towards people who are down and out. I thank the Lord for changing me, for giving my heart, for putting that in my heart. I think we got to show we care, we understand, and we've got good programs, and we're not responding on the basis of putting our finger in the wind. Be creative. That's what I think we need to be, and I think you can all get there. So I'm around to help you.
We're going to take you up on that, Governor. And
are there any other questions from the people that have?
Yeah, I've been going through, and I've been balancing my own questions, and a lot of what I asked came from the people too. So
I don't want to bore everybody here.
No. I think a lot of what, again, Governor, a lot of what we're getting is future of the party, reaction to the GOP convention. And kind of the two narratives that are being set forth by Democrats and Republicans. There's a lot of questions about your political future.
Let me ask you this, or ask you guys this question. Why are we so hung up on party? I think if I had come out and said that I was an atheist, that would have gotten less of a ripple than because I decided to talk to Democrats. My whole career has been doing that, but why shouldn't we be in post-party? Shouldn't we care about the country more than our party? Why is it so darn difficult for somebody? I got people that have worked for me. I was just told today, they can't vote for a Democrat. It's like, you can't vote for a Democrat. Why? What is wrong with you? You're a Democrat. You can't vote for a Republican? How did we get like this? This is ridiculous that we have trapped ourselves in this. So, we need to be you talk about America, we need to be Americans before we're Republicans and Democrats. And, I think the Republican Party traditionally has been government as a last resort, not as a first resort. Use the private sector. If it's in the yellow pages, we probably don't need government to do those kind of things, but let's fill all that in. But get over this. I'm a Republican, therefore I can't change. Well, it's probably your mother and father who talked you into it, so maybe you ought to think about whether you can be independent.
You're hitting the nail on the head, Governor. And I know you personally took some heat for your work with Governor Hickenlooper on a lot of your healthcare initiatives, and I love what you were doing personally. It's just for whatever it's worth, but I'm sure that was difficult politically to be out in front and do this.
Here's the thing. I just got people to understand. What is so difficult about doing what in your heart you think is right? I mean, life is so short. So, you're going to get bumps in the road because you speak out or you do something. I mean, so what? Don't be trapped don't trap yourself. I can't do this or do that. My boss will be angry at me or whatever. If that's where you are, and I'm not talking about outrageous things, but if that's where you are, maybe you need another job. At what point does it matter that we are honest and truthful to ourselves? I hate to go back, and I hate to preach this way, but, as I read inspirational writings, it's my job to shine. Everybody has been given certain skills and certain talents. Use them. Don't bury them. And it may take a little courage from time to time, but I tell you, when you do what you think you need to do, that is the meaning of life. That's where you find satisfaction. Do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Said.
So you're going to take some heat. Who cares? Heat from who? About what? This world is moving so fast that people are mad on Monday. On Tuesday, they don't even remember what your name is.
Well, and I will say, Governor, when we first started, there were 10 of us. right? And it just sort of started from text conversations and emails on Facebook. And 10 of us said, hey, I think we should do something. We were inspired by our former boss. We're inspired by the commitment to public service and engagement.
So what are you up to, 12 now?
And yeah.
Hey.
Well, with you is 11, right? So
Are you growing?
Rolling out a few hundred names, this week. And so, I think there are a lot more people who are not comfortable with being public, and that's okay too for various reasons, work or otherwise. But I think, you said you don't like the word courage, but I really do view it as courage because it provides.
Yeah, I understand.
When someone steps forward and other people say, well, gosh, that person stepped forward, maybe that'll give me a little bit of courage too to also.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, David.
So if you're willing to take a few arrows, we'll step up and take a few with you.
Yeah, I don't mean to poo-poo it. I'm just saying, it's just, I'm not all caught up in the fact, I had a mother that spoke out, and it kind of comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
But look, everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. We all want to be. So these people whose names are being released, I'll bet they're so proud of themselves. I'll bet their spouse is proud of them. I'll bet there's all kind of people proud of them. When you asked me at the beginning, I kind of, didn't respond probably as well as I should have. What kind of feedback have I had? I've had some of the most beautiful notes sent to me. And I know that everybody doesn't like what I did. I know I got people that criticize me. I've lost friends over this, okay? And people I thought were my friends. And I'll see if I can reconcile that. But, most people respect you but don't get into the personal attacks. Stay up high. That was the thing we learned from Martin Luther King. Stay up high. Seize the high moral ground. Be proud of yourself. Don't put somebody down because they don't agree with you. And example will help you to draw people as well, right? I think that's the case, David. Look, you started with 10. Now you're going to put out hundreds of names from George Bush's administration. I mean, it's really pretty remarkable.
I'll ask you another question, Governor. I'm reading our chat as well as our Q&A section here, and you said the importance of reaching out to millennials. And I know that you talked a lot about some of those issues that are core to that age demographic, whether it's the environment or if it's immigration or race relations or even COVID response, quite frankly.
Yeah.
What do you
or the problem of the gig economy?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we see what Uber and other companies are doing in California right now.
Americans, or the problem of homelessness or mental illness. These are all big time things.
So the Republicans have had a tough time resonating. You've said it with these issues, with that age demographic. How best do we as an organization engage on these topics with them? I mean, we don't have a platform right now. We don't have a national leader as Republicans, but I think there's an opportunity there either during this election.
You are all very, very canny and very smart politically. And you know how to talk to the people who are the decision makers. Trevor, what was that young lady's name that did the World War Zero? Carol, what was her last name? Do you remember? O'Brien, I think was her name. She graduated from Harvard. She grew up in Alaska. She's so impressive about the need to do something on climate. I just think, look, my sense is, as I said earlier, things come from the bottom up. I was looking at who some of you work for. John, you work for, we work for about everybody in Congress. Matt Salmon, Bill Goodling, Tom Bliley, okay? You were in the lieutenant governor's race. You got David worked, Department of Education in the White House. Karen worked for Larry Hogan. You know a lot of people, and we need to start just talking about this because who does the party appeal to right now? We don't have minority voters. We don't have many college-educated voters, some, but not as many as we would like. We don't have young people. Well, if you have a store and you're trying to sell things and you have no customers, what happens? And one of the things that's concerning about this Republican convention is I think they're trying to fire up their base with a very dark message about what's happening. Things are going to go horrible if the other side wins. I haven't heard a lot of really great new ideas out of them about what's the positives in all this.
So Governor, earlier today, you spoke about the need to speak out against the violence. Can you just talk a little bit about police reform and community activism? I think that's going to resonate all across the country with people. They're sick of seeing the violence, and even worse than that, is you have these sort of militia folks taking things into their own hands as they do in Wisconsin. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, we had some problems here, significant problems here, and you might remember the case of the 13, 14-year-old young boy who was shot and killed by police in Cleveland on the playground, who had a plastic gun, and the person that called the police didn't describe it appropriately. He was killed. We also had a case where a couple were in a police chase. Cops jumped on top and shot, 150 rounds into their car. They were unarmed. And so what happened was some Democrat legislators, Nina Turner in particular, brought a group in to see me and said, "We think we have a problem." And I said, "I think we do too." And they said, "Well, we'd like to have a study." I said, "We're not going to do a study. We're going to start on this tomorrow." So we brought everybody in that had a stake. We had police, law enforcement officials. We had people who had studied the street for a long time. We had ministers. We had some politicians. And there was just, and listen, I've been advising, she might not like it, but I've been talking to the mayor of Atlanta. I've had, 3 or 4 conversations about what she wants to do, and she's trying to get on top of all this. And she's been terrific in terms of listening and trying to get it right in the way that she thinks. And so we came out with a whole series of things that involved a statewide use of deadly force. Every department had to do it. The collection of data, which was really important. Nobody thought that would ever happen. And the collection of data would show who the heck was being put in, who was being arrested, what was going on, so we could see what was happening. And there were a number of other provisions. And frankly, we then went up to the convention in Cleveland, where I met with community leaders, which was a prime target for people to create violence with all the folks that were there. We didn't even have a broken window because the whole community came together. By doing that, we kind of got ahead of things, and it has to always be updated, but training is a very big deal in all this, and the ability to connect police with community, because police have to understand the community, but the community has to understand that policeman wants to go home at night. And I'm doing this Zoom call here from Westerville, where a year or so ago we had 2 policemen killed in when they went to a domestic violence thing, and they were both killed. So these are really tough jobs, but we got to train them, and we have to respect them, but we got to understand the community. And I just heard today before I came on that I think it was Doc Rivers, you might remember him, the great basketball player.
Yeah.
Came out and said, I love America, but America doesn't love me, because we're, as a black man, we all fear for what will happen when we go out. Now, that's just something we have to hear. And I'm really pleased that I did this with Nina Turner. And I'll tell you another issue that we refuse to address at all, and that's the issue of guns. There are some reasonable things we can do to protect the Second Amendment, and yet have some reasonable restrictions around gun ownership, like figuring out who has them, okay, and who we sell them to. But we're sort of trapped in this paradigm that was created many, many years ago, and we can't seem to get out of our way. But this issue of police and community, I've become more and more convinced when I see what happened up in Kenosha, and I need to get more active in this and to tell people you can't bury your heads in the sand and think this is going to go away. You got to there's great things you can do to get ahead of this that makes an enormous amount of sense. But I have to say to you that if all you worry about are polls and politics, forget it. You're going to just pray, Karen, that this kind of a problem it's just going to go away. Well, it isn't going to just go away. And there's things you can do that are proactive. So you take some heat from some people. Tough.
Governor, any final thoughts you want to share with our group?
I think I've talked too long, and the people
I could listen to you all day long.
Probably going to say.
Governor, real quick before your final comments, I will say that what your comments today, I'm going to circle back to what you first talked about, and that is Joe Biden is going to bring people around the table and have adult, significant, discussions based on merit. And that's what you've done through your whole professional career. And what you continue to do, whether it's talking to Governor Hickenlooper or the governor of Atlanta, reaching across the aisle, it's leaders like you who are able to do that with folks like Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden is a leader on the Democratic side that's willing to do that with Republicans. And I think that's a good message we need to continue to send to people.
Yes, I think so. And I just want to wish you all the best, not just for this election, but going forward to revive our Republican Party and make it an exciting, positive, additive party that can improve the lives of everyone in our country. So thank you.
Well, Governor, thank you very much. David, Karen,
right.
Thanks a lot. And on behalf of 43 Alumni for Biden, I appreciate everyone joining. And Governor, we can't thank you enough. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.